Hey everyone, and welcome to 412 Kids. This is the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's parenting podcast. My name is Abby Mackey. I am your host. I am a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette health writer. I'm also a registered nurse with most of my experience in pediatrics. And I have two kids, which means that I have experienced the topic today, which is kindergarten screening. Now, this did not always exist, but it's been around for a little while now. There are questions, though, about why it came about, what its function is, what happens, and what parents should do about it. It's also pretty important to realize that if this is the very first time that your child has been assessed academically, that how you approach it, the words that you say, the environment you create sort of sets up a framework for how they view test taking in the future. So, with the help of my Post-Gazette colleague, Megan Tomazik, she's one of our education reporters, we're going to look at what kindergarten screening is and how you as a parent can be most effective in that situation, whether your child is one who looks forward to the experience, that they feel very grown up, or if they're the type of child that's feeling a little bit anxious. So let's get to it. Here's Megan. So we are joined by Megan Tomazik. She is one of our education reporters. And even if I were not an employee of the Post-Gazette, I would follow Megan because I have kids and she's the one out there reporting on the schools and our communities and making sure that we know what's going on. And so we so appreciate her. So thank you, Megan, for coming on.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So we worked on a story together that is now live on post-gazette.com about these kindergarten screenings and where they came from and what they're for and sort of how to deal with them from a parenting perspective. So I am 40 years old. When I went to kindergarten, these did not exist, right? So they're not that old. So when did these start, Megan?
Yeah, so for a lot of local school districts that I talk to, they've been around for a while. I know at Mount Lebanon, more than a decade for sure.
I sort of think about, first of all, if we're going to help parents sort of understand what this is, what's on the test, right? So I know that it's like letters and numbers, maybe some shapes. What else is on there?
Yeah, pretty basic stuff. Just like knowing your parents' phone numbers, knowing your address, your first name, and then, some school districts go down to gross motor skills. So can they stand on one leg? Can they walk upstairs? Those kinds of things.
And from having two kids, I will say that they probably do some of this stuff in ways that are almost concealed, right? So when we think about like talking to your kids about what's going to happen, I know in my district, they sort of walk your child down a set of steps as they go to the place that they're going to. So they probably aren't staring at your child saying, walk up these steps, right? They're just like going from A to B, and they probably are observing them on the way, which is nice. So from your work and mine, right? Because Megan sort of handled, of course, sort of the education school district side of it, and I handled sort of a mental health, how to talk to your kids side of it. This is generally a positive thing, right? Most people are viewing it that way. So what are the benefits here?
Well, for school districts, it's really just giving them a baseline to know, at what point your kid's coming in. It's not a way to say, oh, we're going to exclude certain kids because they might not have certain skill sets. So it really just helps them, prepare for the incoming kindergarten class.
And it seems like, of course, this is an intentional process on the parts of the school district. They aren't just throwing stuff at a wall to see what sticks. And it sounds like from the work that you did, there's a local organization that is sort of driving the recommendations maybe around how school districts should guide this transition to kindergarten. That group is called Trying Together, right? So what are they doing?
Yeah, so they're based in Squirrel Hill, and they really are advocating for, increased services for early education. So on the state and national level, they're working with policymakers to make some shifts there. But then locally in Allegheny County, they're working with school districts to help build transition teams to really, help kids as they move into kindergarten and start that new chapter.
And I love that. I mean, I learned from the reporting that you did that there really are people in these school districts that this is their gig. This is kind of their specialty. And I was really struck by what Bethel Park does in particular. And, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm not pointing them out for any reason, except that I think that what they do is cool. They kind of throw a party. Tell us about that part.
Yeah, so they turn it into a community event over the summer. They have set up stations for kids to come in, and now they'll give them bags, that they can use over the summer, and then they're able to meet with principals. And then after that, these middle and high schoolers from Bethel Park come in and interact with students and talk with them, and then take them over to meet other kindergarten students and the teachers that they'll have once they finally start school, and then they'll be in that setting until they go and take their assessment. So they'll color and do all those kinds of fun things.
And it's really important too. I think in many districts, at least the ones who do these screenings, because not everybody does them either, that usually isn't the first time they're meeting their teacher. It usually isn't the first time that they're going to be in that building. So that's a really important and developmentally appropriate part of this, I think. And so when I was preparing to do this, I put out like a little informal survey on social media, just how people were feeling about it. And a lot of people said, this made my child feel more grown up, or, they have an older sibling and they're really excited to sort of mimic what they're doing. A lot of kids feel pretty good about this, but that doesn't reflect how all kids feel about this, right? So we have kids in our neurodivergent community. We have kids who just tend to be maybe a little bit more anxious. Maybe they're super attached to mom and dad. And so stepping away for a minute will be difficult. And so for my part of this story, I spoke to Dr. Abigail Schlesinger. I always stumble on that name. It's a little tricky. She is a child psychiatrist at UPMC, and she's one of those people with so many high-ranking roles at both Children's Hospital and Western Psych that I can't even list them all here. But she's also a professor of psychiatry at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. And she offered us some tips on this too. So one of them is to be careful with our language as parents, right? So when we go toward this situation, and I don't know, Megan, maybe the people you talk to were careful about this too. But, maybe be careful about using the word test, right? She said something hilarious. She said, check your own pulse. She said, this is something I tell parents all the time. Check your own pulse. And if this is a topic that gets you nervous, it's going to get your kid nervous. So, at least for this first time, maybe use the word assessment. And then later on, you can start using the word test. Or you can just sort of describe it and say, this is a situation where they're going to find out what you're really good at, and maybe some places where you need help. That is what this is, right? That's what you found out.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, of course, if you have a child that you really think the anxiety level is going to interrupt their performance on this test, maybe it is a situation where you should be checking with your pediatrician or seeking out a counselor ahead of time. But the last thing is just sort of honoring it as a transition. And this is a super cute part of this, right? So ignore the test, ignore the assessment. This is almost like a handoff from being a child that's at home with your family, not school age, to sort of entering a period where your teacher is now, an authority figure, hopefully a trusted figure in your life. So when you go to the assessment, do a sort of a practice run for like the first day of school, right? And if your child needs a little help through that transition, have a favorite stuffed animal in your bag and let your child give it a quick hug before they go in, almost like a handoff, like we're here and now you're going to go there, right? Or if this is something that's okay with your family, like a favorite little piece of candy, and sit together and have your little favorite piece of candy and say, okay, now you're ready. We'll see you in a little bit, right? Now, when we send our kids off to this screening, Megan, it's short, right? It's not that long.
Yeah, districts definitely make an effort to keep it shorter. Mount Lebanon keeps theirs at most 30 minutes. So kids can keep their attention on, what they need to, and it gives the district enough time to get what they need as well.
Right. And that's appropriate, right? Because we're talking about kids. They don't have much of an attention span anyway. As we're saying, this could be a situation that isn't their favorite thing to get started with school. So probably an important reminder for kids also that, okay, even if you're feeling a little bit weird about this is short, right? And that's one thing that Dr. Schlesinger also said is just a reminder for parents and kids, because we have to remember our kids might be fine with this, but the parents could be the ones kind of freaking out, right?
Yeah.
As she pointed out to me, she said, some parents sort of feel like this is an assessment of their parenting. Did I teach my kid enough? Did I send them to the right preschool or something like that? But to sort of calm that down, she said, just remember, this is a snapshot in time. That's all this is, right? It's going to affect, if anything at all, just the very first part of kindergarten. That's all. And another important thing here, Megan, that was in your reporting too, is, if we're looking at strengths and weaknesses as we go into kindergarten, part of that is because there's a huge range of education that happens or doesn't before kids come into kindergarten, right? So I know you have statistics in there about the number of children who even have access to preschool. Tell us a little bit about that part.
Preschool services is a pretty big equity issue in Pennsylvania. Trying Together found in the 2021-2022 school year that 78% of 3-year-olds and 65% of 4-year-olds in the state didn't have access to a pre-K program, which can really, impact how they're set up for kindergarten.
When it comes to just sort of calming ourselves down going into this, if that's a necessary thing, right? Dr. Schlesinger also talked about how we have to be calm before we can cope or communicate, right? And so part of that coping can be preparation, which is also teaching your kid a pretty great life skill, right? So some children really like to know what's going to happen, and that may be all that's necessary for them to feel great about this situation. So as we said, usually kids go in the building for some reason before screening day, and or they meet their teacher before screening day. But if for some reason that doesn't happen, or you have to miss it, or whatever it is, Dr. Schlesinger recommended asking, that it couldn't hurt to ask, to find a reason to be in there, to find a reason to meet the teacher. You could even ask to email the teacher ahead of time and just let them know a little bit about your child and maybe how they might react to that situation. But another part of that preparation might just be knowing how the test would go, or, as you approach that time period, how that day would look. So Megan, if people are interested in trying to find out more about that, what are the resources for them? How could they find out more?
Yeah, I mean, they could just always, call the school. They're very helpful. They'll connect you with, the kindergarten experts, and you can kind of go from there.
Perfect. Megan, thank you so much for doing this story with me and coming on 412 Kids. We so appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We so appreciate Megan coming on 412 Kids today and sharing her expertise working with our local school districts day in and day out. And for today, applying it to the idea of kindergarten screening, which some of us are going through right about now. But before you go, we have a few topics we want to visit with you in our last segment called 412 for You. And this first one is pretty serious, and that's why we're going to lead it off with this one. And it's the idea of food insecurity, especially for our kids over the summer. This is a time of year where free or discounted breakfasts and lunches don't exist anymore. That's the grab and go bags that some districts give away for the weekends don't exist anymore. But the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank is trying to correct that with their summer youth cafes, which is just such a great title for this because it's so normalizing. It sounds so fun, right? These are going to look different depending on where you are. In some cases, they're going to be full-blown meals. In some cases, they're going to be snacks. Sometimes they're sort of grab and go meals. So these are going to be available to kids and families in our region who need them over the summer. One of the best parts is there's no registration. No one's asking for your name. No one's asking for proof of income. None of that. They're just giving food to people who need it. To find out where and when this is all happening, visit pittsburghfoodbank.org/summer. Now, a more fun topic. When our kids come home for the summer, we all know about this academic summer slide, right? They're not engaging with math and science and reading as much as they are during the school year necessarily. And so, in a lot of cases, we try to sort of support this at home. One of the ways to do that is to have your kids sign up for the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh Summer Reading Program. And this year, it's called the Readapalooza Book Bowl. So the idea is that you read over the summer, and audiobooks count too. So for people for whom listening to a book is a better way to approach it, that's fine too. You log either time or your number of books. And along the way, you can win prizes like gift cards, pirate tickets, a special Steelers training camp package, and more. And so this is available at any Carnegie Library across the county, right? You can sign up right online at carnegielibrary.org/summer-reading for all the details. And then at the end of the summer on August 11th, there's going to be a big party in the lawn at the Oakland campus, which my family has gone to for many years, and it's really, really fun. So look for that too. Last thing, you've probably heard about the idea of rad passes this summer, right? The idea that you can take your county library card and earn free admission into some of our area's coolest attractions. So full disclosure, even I was confused by how to actually do this. So I'm going to provide a little bit of a tutorial for how to actually take advantage of this program. So all you need is a library card, and then you go to Rad Pass, so rad like the word RAD, pass.org. You log in with your library card number and your PIN, which is the same one you use when you check out books, right? And so when you log in, you're going to see a list of all sorts of places: Soldiers and Sailors, the Aviary, the Zoo, the Carnegie Museums, whatever it is. And they're going to tell you whether there are passes available. You're going to pick a day for you to go, depending on what is available at that time. Now, some of these are going to say that they don't have any passes available, but that's okay. According to the website, they are updated every day. So if you don't have a preferred place available to you at the moment, just check back on another day and see if you have the chance to go. But this is such a wonderful program. It's going to save you a lot of money. And in some cases, there are places that maybe you wouldn't naturally go to if you were paying full price. But if it's just with a free pass, maybe it'll compel your family to go to try it out. And maybe it's a place that you love. So you can't just show up at the zoo with your library card and say, I want a rad pass. That's not how it works. You have to plan ahead a little bit, but that is how to do it. And I just wanted to share that because it's such an exceptional program. So I have been your host. My name is Abby Mackey. Our editor is Polly Higgins. Our producers are Jacob Comer and Matt Rosenberg. And as always, it is our privilege from all of us here at the Post-Gazette to be with you on this journey with your 412 kids.